Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is the World Leaders Session. I am delighted to serve as your MC once again. In this session, we're going to be hearing more from our distinguished lineup of speakers with Dr. Hong Seok-hyun, the chair of the World Leaders Session. Dr. Hong is the chairman of Korea's largest media group, Chungang Media Network, which includes the flagship newspaper Chungang-ilbo and Korea's fastest rising television station, JTBC. All right, I would also like to introduce the outstanding former statesman. Actually, why don't we skip this, because I think we all know who is amongst us this morning. All right, well, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Chairman Hong. All yours, Chairman Hong.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor and pleasure to be the chair of this session. I'd like to thank the highly distinguished members of this panel for taking the time to participate in the annual Jejuporum. This session is supposedly for the next 60 minutes, but we are so a little bit late already. So let's get started straight away. Geopolitics in East Asia is in the midst of a turbulent time. Cooperation and mutual dependence among East Asian nations have deepened dramatically for the past few decades. But at the same time, we are also seeing an increase in political and security issues. At the heart of the issues lies a rising China, trying to reflect more of its interests and perspectives in the regional order, while the United States responds with its rebalancing strategy. The competition and conflict between the two great powers is deepening, with points of contention in almost every field, including the South and East China Seas, trade, currency exchange, cybersecurity, and human rights. In these circumstances, Japan is speeding up its efforts to assume the role of a normal nation and keeping a step with the United States. Add to this worsening relations between the US and Russia following the situation in Ukraine, while cooperation between China and Russia appears to gain strength. As a result, we are seeing a new fault line being drawn in East Asia, with the United States and Japan on one hand, and China and Russia on the other. In this environment, we are facing various issues of conflict, including those in maritime security, territorial disputes, North Korea's nuclear development, and economic problems. Because of the existing fault line among countries in the region, it is becoming increasingly difficult to deal with these conflicts. This reality poses concerns and worries for many in the region. Is there no way to find measures to control and mitigate the tendency towards rivalry and conflict that we are seeing now? Can we inspire leadership that can tackle this mood of tension in our region? This is the macro subject, first of all, which I would like to seek your wisdom on today. So let's begin with the macro subject. After that, I'd like to hear your views on individual pending issues. Looking back at the Cold War era, the excessive suspicion the United States and Soviet Union had for each other resulted in many cases of overreaction. This kind of escalation had disastrous consequences for everyone. Bearing this in mind, let's examine if the approach of China and the United States is truly offensive and negative towards each other. First of all, is China's assertiveness at a truly worrisome level? Or does its defensive stance appear aggressive because of its excessive anxiety towards the U.S.? Secondly, is the U.S. rebalancing strategy really to contain China's rise? Or is it merely a defensive policy as well? I raise this question because this may be the point where we could seize an opportunity for mutual restraint between the U.S. and China. I would like to ask Prime Minister Ko Chok-dong to start us off.
Well, thank you for asking me first. Once at an ASEAN plus China meeting, when I was Prime Minister, and Premier Wen was the PM of China, I put it in this way regarding the rise of China. I said China is like a very big elephant which has joined the ASEAN members in the swimming pool. And the 10 ASEAN members, like small mouse deer, enjoying their little swim in the pool. And when China enters the swimming pool, China must be very careful on its behavior. No matter how gentle China is, every little movement of China will impinge on the space of the others, given the size of the swimming pool. So my point was, China would have to be cautious in its behavior. It should not be over-assertive, or the other swimmers, animals in the pool would find it difficult to have their freedom. And secondly, the solution lies actually not just in a fixed-size swimming pool. You got to enlarge a swimming pool so that China grows bigger, the other countries can also grow bigger. So that's the essence of my message to Premier Wen when we had a meeting at ASEAN. Of course, now in this swimming pool, you have the other big, shall we say, animal, which is the United States. So if the US and China contend for influence within the swimming pool, it is very troublesome for all of us. So the key is whether we can find a way where the US can recognize the rise of China, and China would have to ensure through its deeds and words that its rise will be peaceful. And of course, if we can find this accommodation between the two big powers, one of course is much bigger, the other one is a rising power, then we all work towards cooperative leadership, towards cooperation. We can make the size of the swimming pool much bigger. Well, I think there's a place for all of us. I think that's the essence of my message. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prime Minister. If the underlying tensions of the US and China are not mutually exclusive and aggressive as they seem, I believe we'll be able to find an opening to start resolving pending issues in the region. I'm interested to know what can countries in the region do to control and ease current tensions. And besides individual nations, is there a role for multilateral international organizations to play? Is there a role for ASEAN, for instance? And is there room to utilize existing frameworks such as the East Asia Summit and APEC? Could Dr. Mahathir address these issues for us?
Thank you very much. But I would like to state at the very beginning that there will always be conflict between nations. Now the whole world has got almost 200 nations, and it is impossible to avoid conflicts between them. What is important is how they resolve the conflict. Today, we still believe that one of the solutions lies in going to war, to fight the enemy and to try and defeat him. This is very costly because War means killing of people, destruction of whole countries. Today we have wonderful weapons which can actually wipe out whole cities, and if they want to, whole countries can be wiped out. We do not like to see war. Conflicts which can be resolved through negotiation or arbitration or through a court of law would not worry us so much. What worries us is the possibility that in the end they will go to war. Now, war has never resolved any problem. We see during the last war, the victors did not gain so much. In fact, the defeated people, the vanquished people, they gained from what? From the peace that was achieved after the war. But we now see a lot more conflicts involving of many nations. The reasons for the conflicts are not really that important, but the way we resolve the conflicts is what is important. Our fear today is the fear of violence, of wars, of killings, of dropping bombs on your head and firing rockets. These are what worries us. So we must end this race that is going on, where trillions of dollars are being spent by the big countries to equip themselves with more destructive weapons. And once they come up with these more sophisticated weapons, other countries will have to rearm because otherwise they would be left behind. Countries spend huge sums of money on preparing for war. They say that to have peace, prepare for war. But what actually happens is that when you want peace and countries are armed to the teeth, the probable result, one of the results anyway, would be going to war to fight each other. We hope that world wars like the First World War and the Second World War will not happen. But then there are smaller wars which are no less costly and no less brutal. So I believe strongly that it is only when our mindset is such that we reject war as a solution to friction or conflict, then only we will feel less fear from conflicts. There are ways and means of settling differences, and I have mentioned that in the initial speech that I made just now. And today, Southeast Asia is not at war with another. We have conflicts. There is conflict between Malaysia and Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore. But the solution to these conflicts is not through war. Nobody died, but these conflicts were settled. So I would like to say that it is not impossible to avoid war. It is the problem of your mindset. For so long as you think war is legitimate, then there is always that possibility that countries will go to war. But if you declare internationally that war, especially wars of aggression, is a crime, and that those who perpetrate wars of aggression should be punished, I think the chances of wars would be less, and the amount of money spent on equipping yourself with sophisticated, modern, lethal weapons would be far less. Today, we have countries with nuclear warheads. Nuclear material is not something that we really understand. We know how to activate the process, but we cannot deactivate it. Today, there are power plants and there are nuclear weapons which we cannot get rid of, because once you activate any nuclear material, you cannot reverse the process. And the world is becoming loaded with nuclear material which cannot be disposed of. And of course, it may be used for wars, frightening wars that actually can wipe out the whole human race. So I think that we should learn to avoid war, to regard war as a crime, so that we have less fear and less need for us to spend billions of dollars on buying new weapons. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahathir. I believe East Asia can get some ideas from the European experience. And on this point, I would like to bring in Prime Minister Letta.
Thank you. Listening about the tensions, the difficulties, but also the hopes for the future of the Asian integration, I was wondering how the European experience can be interesting. And I take one point that is, in my view, crucial and decisive. The image today of the European democracy is the European Parliament. We decided to have an European Parliament. We vote every 5 years, electing more than 700 members of the European Parliament. I've been, for a period, member of this European Parliament. It's a place where people coming from 28 different countries discuss together and decide together laws important for the whole continent. Is a way to discuss and to find peaceful solutions, as you said just 1 minute ago. But the seat of the Parliament is important. We decided to have as seat of the Parliament the old city of Strasbourg. It is not by chance. Strasbourg was and is a great city of Europe. Today is France, but Strasbourg was, for a period, Germany, for a period, France, another period, Germany, because Strasbourg was exactly in the front line of the wars of the centuries in which the European countries were in war against each other. And this border, the border in Strasbourg, was exactly the border, the bloody border, in which millions of young Europeans lost their lives to move the border 10 kilometers from one side or another side. The most important picture of the European integration, in my view, is the photo with two old leaders, the German Chancellor Helmut Kohl and the French President of the Republic, François Mitterrand. Some years ago, hand in hand in the cemetery of Verdun, millions of French and German young people died there to move the border, and this border today doesn't exist anymore. And in this border, we have today our European Parliament when and where we take decisions all together. This is, in my view, the key point. The European integration was, since the beginning, after the World War II, the big mission to say, we don't want wars among us, and we want to bring peace out of Europe with our neighbors, because we are witnesses of the fact that too many wars in the world began in Europe between the main European countries, between France and Germany, between France and Great Britain, between Italy and Austria. And this big message today is, in my view, the most important one. We have today, Mr. Chairman, if I can add one final point, one generational problem, if I can. The generational problem is the fact that the new generation is not completely aware of what happened 70, 80 years ago, and on how the European integration is and was so decisive to end up wars among European countries. And today we think that everything is for granted. We think that peaceful coexistence is for granted. We think that the European Union is for granted. It is not like that. It is a day-by-day victory to continue this integration, and it is, as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine in Crimea shows very well, a need day by day to have a strong European Union to bring peace to the neighboring countries and to continue to live in peace and to strengthen this integration. So my only message is that this witness and these decisions were decisive for our future. And this is why I'm very happy to be here with two leaders of countries coming from the ASEAN integration, because I think what you are saying and what you are doing among the 10 ASEAN countries is so important, is a very important path to the future, and this is exactly our European experience, and this is why I, at the end of my remarks, mention the generational divide. We have to explain to the young generation that peace is not for granted. We have to reach peace day by day with strong, integrated institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Coincidentally, four members of this panel are from countries participating in the TPP. So let me ask Prime Minister Bolger on the point the TPP can play a role in, making us live in peace. If the TPP goes into effect to create a new trade order for all of East Asia, and with China also being part of it in the future, perhaps it could function to ease tensions and increase mutual cooperations among the regional players, as this mechanism acts as a multilateral trade scheme to tie the US and China together.
Thank you. If I step back a little and say what we're really talking about, and I hear other members on the panel, is changing views and attitudes that have dominated the reaction of the world down the centuries. We still bring the same attitude to boundaries as when clubs were the weapons, not nuclear bombs. And that has to change if we're going to have a safe world. You cannot use the same attitude in defending your borders when you have the extraordinary destructive power of nuclear weapons and many nuclear weapons. So then you start to look at boundaries in the terms of trade. And historically, that's always been where there was a border, you complied with certain regulations and rules, and you paid taxes. That's in essence what happened. What TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, is designed to do, as others are designed to do, is to reduce those barriers in just about all areas. So there is a uniform interest in the success in not one country, just your own nationalism, the most dangerous motivational force in the world, but you have an interest in the region, however big it is, that you can collaborate on trade. Some areas are more attuned or more able to produce one commodity and not another, and vice versa. The whole purpose of trade is to go to your beneficial or your most successful operations and trade that with someone else. So TPP is very big. It's very large. There's a number of people that are nervous that countries will lose their national identity, and all of those issues have to be overcome. there's no guarantee that, for example, the US Congress will even agree with it, because nationalism is growing everywhere, and it's certainly growing in the United States. You raised the question with China. You may recall I noted in my remarks that New Zealand was the first developed country to sign a free trade agreement with China. You would say the disparity between a country of 1,300 million and a country of 4.5 million is so large it's ridiculous. Why sign an agreement? But it's been hugely successful both ways. But it's also been successful in changing views and attitudes. I go back to the point made by a colleague from Italy. It's educating people to the world as it exists and the challenges that exist that are important, and that's where trade, I think, can be very, very powerful weapon. That you can see people engaging with others because there is some commercial benefit, there's some pluses, there's some opportunities. It's really about sharing. Boundaries are an accident of history. We heard earlier, it's where the last battle ended, is where the boundary was drawn. And then we'll fight many more wars to defend that accidental boundary, because that's what it is. Then we have attitudes that are locked in the past. The issue of Crimea, Crimea, but Ukraine. There's a legitimate question to ask. How close would any of the Western countries like to have the Russian military power beside them? So NATO was going up to Russia's border, there was a predictable pushback. That's inevitable, given history. We're not that far advanced at the moment. People talk about conflict or tensions between the United States and Russia. We should be concerned. If you look at Poland and the Baltic states, Russia's building up troops on one side and the United States and NATO on the other. Are we not capable of learning from history? Do we not take up what occurs when you put two armies closer and closer together? Surely we should say the world is big enough to share. Some of you might wonder what I have here on my lapel. Let me explain it briefly. On Sunday before I left to come here, I was at a Maori village, our indigenous people, where in 1881 they said to the colonials who had marched on them for war to take their land and their property, but no, there is enough to share. We're not going to fight, we want to share. This was considered totally unexplainable by the colonial mindset out of Europe, but primarily out of England. So they arrested the leaders, etc., and so forth. This is the symbol of peace that they wear to this day with pride. They sought a peaceful solution in 1881. So-called savages, not exposed to the great intellectual developments of either Asia or Europe, but they knew that peace was more important than fighting over the land.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would like to ask the Prime Minister Han Sung-soo, who has insight in the role of the trade schemes in promoting peace in the region and also mitigating the conflicts between nations. And TPP and RCEP are being pursued on a separate path. And I believe the rivalry between these two efforts are not very desirable. What do you think about resolving potential conflicts and integrating, two initiatives together for better future?
The regional FTA is a second-best solution for the trading world. And the proliferation of regional and bilateral FTA over the years is entirely due to the failure of the multilateral trading system, WTO. When Doha round was initiated in 2001, the year when China was admitted to WTO, there was a great expectation. But because there was a breakdown in 2008 over agricultural issues, disagreement between developed countries, United States, EU, and Japan on the one side, and Brazil, China, South Africa, particularly India on the other side. After that, negotiations stalled. So TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Cooperation, is the outcome of this failure. And as you may know, TPP has 12 members, has a very rigorous and comprehensive content in it. It involves not only commodities, services, intellectual property rights, but it involves state-owned enterprise also. Whereas RCEP has 16 members, including Korea and China and Japan. We are not a member of TPP, Korea is not. We recognize the ASEAN centrality because this was initiated by the ASEAN. But it's a little bit loose type of FTA. Now, I am completely for merging or at least close cooperation between two organizations. But prospect is very bleak because President Obama a few days ago wrote that TPP should be the international or global trading rule-setting organization, to which China responded through their spokesman at the Foreign Ministry a few days ago, only 1 week ago, that US should not be dominant in global rule-making. And I think each nation has its own responsibility and obligation to deal with this problem. So although Korea is not a member but expressed keen interest in joining TPP, we are not a member of it. At the time of initiating TPP, we were in negotiation with China over FTA, so we could not really, in a sense, antagonize China. But I personally hope that these two organizations should go together. This is the spirit of APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Organization, which was created in 1989, which I was one of the initiators as Korea's Minister of Trade and Industry. In actual fact, APEC played a very important role in expediting the conclusion of the Uruguay round at the time. Therefore, I hope to see two FTAs merged in due course, but in the immediate future, I think it will happen.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. Now, I'd like to invite Prime Minister Murayama on the point that the progressive elites and intellectuals' role in mitigating conflicts between nations. As we all know, Prime Minister Murayama is very highly respected in Korea because he is brave enough to keep on saying very conscientiously about history and about various issues which are bothering two nations. So I would like to invite you on the point that how and what role the intellectuals can play in mitigating the national conflicts.
いや別にこれという知識はありませんけどもね、やっぱり日本がこの戦争に負けて、しかもその原子爆弾を2発も投下されてですね、世界の人類が経験したことのないようなその悲惨な経験をしてきたわけです。そういう経験をしてきているだけにですね、もうやっぱりその知識とか何とか言うんでなくてね、もう本能的にこの戦争は絶対にしてはいけないと いう気持ちは強く持っています。でその気持ちがですね、やっぱり全てをこう解決して前進させていく大きな力になっているんではないかと、私はこれから息をする者としてはね、そういうその国民の良識というものをね、しっかり踏まえてこう考えていくということが大事ではないかと、いうふうに思っています。今対立をしたり紛争をしたりいろいろ問題が世界中に起こってますけども、そういうものを解決するのにですね、武力で解決してもダメなんですよ。これ武力で解決したってそれはそこが収まるだけの話であってね、根っこはまた異常な気持ちになって残っていくわけですから、また紛争が起こるというようなことを繰り返すことになるんでね、やっぱりそういう解決の仕方というものもですね、どうして収めていくかと、みんなが納得してくれるかという立場で解決する努力をしていくことが私は大事じゃないか。紛争を起こさないったってね、それはこれだけの人類が生活をって経済競争もしてるしいろいろやってるわけですから、何らかの紛争が起こる可能性はありますよ。だけど起こった時にその紛争を解決するのにですね、やっぱり人間の本来の生きる姿というものをね、やっぱりお互いに認め合って、そしてこの話し合いであくまでも納得づけで解決するという努力をしていくことが大事ではないかというふうに私は思いますね。ですから今私どもの気持ちからすればね、それはどんなことがあったってもそれは戦争はしてはいけないんだと、戦争をすべきではないという気持ちが強いですよ、日本国民は。だけども今例えばこの湾岸南の方の島を巡ってね、いろんな対立があるとか、いろいろ紛争ありますよね、あります。だけどもその紛争に対してね、日本の国民の持っている感情はですね、もう領有権の問題でね、お互いの争うなんてことはもう愚かなことだと、ね、どこの国が占有だったらいいじゃないかと、その島が本当にその島の周辺に住んでいる皆さんのね、幸せにつながるような開発をしていくと、ね、平和が維持できるような開発をしていくということで協力し合う姿が大事なんで、どこの国の問題なんていうことをですね、お互いに言い合うようなもう時代ではないんだと、そういう気持ちが非常に強いですからね、私はそれは大事にするべきだと思いますよ。そういうことがね、やっぱり紛争を解決してですね、世の中のなんて言いますか、対立をなくしていくね、大きな根源になると私は思います。これは全くなんて言いますか、精神的なことを言うだけで申し訳ありませんけどもね、私はそれしかないと思うんですよ。武力で解決すれば必ず根っこが残って対立が続いていくと。だから解決する場合に武力で解決する、力で解決するんではなくてね、あくまでもやっぱり心情に基づいて人間の心というものをしっかり踏まえた上で、お互いに納得できるような形でもって解決していくということが大事なんで、それしか私はもう今日本が経験した立場からすればないんではないかと。その気持ちに日本はやっぱり徹してね、これからも頑張っていかないかんというふうに思ってますし、日本の国民の心情はそうだと思いますよ。それしか私は本当に平和を作っていくものはないというふうに思いますね。
Thank you, Prime Minister. I think we have about 15 minutes remaining. So for the remaining time, I think we would like to discuss the big theme of the Jejuporum, which is Asia's new order and cooperative leadership. So from your respective standpoint, what do you all see as the most challenging issue vis-a-vis this topic, and what could be the solution? We have so many distinguished members in this panel, and we have only 15 minutes. So I would like to invite all of you just 2 to 3 minutes each. So would you start first?
I like to start. I think the title of the meeting conference is a little bit misleading. The title should have been Asia's Disorder and Need for Creative Leadership. Because I hope I'm mistaken, but I am seeing the beginning of history in Asia. The Francis Fukushima in 1989 wrote that because of the failure of communism and collapse of Soviet Union, history and the liberal democracy and capitalism won, or victory of that. And therefore the securities and freedom have been achieved, and consequently history has ended. That was his remarks. But is it true in Asia now? I think no. Particularly the rivalry between China and United States will create a lot of problems. There are a lot of issues in Asia. Very disorderly issues are now popping up. So what we'd like to see is particularly new normalization of relations between the United States and China. At the time when China and US relationship was really bad, in the early 70s, Mao and Nixon normalized relationship between United States and China. And that created peaceful sort of order in our part of the world for the last 30 years. Now, I think both countries should come again for a meaningful dialogue, and leaders should meet. And once there's a peace between the two, normalization relationship between the two, I think Asia's order will be guaranteed. But unless they are done, they do that, I think Asia's order cannot be guaranteed.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I was told that we don't have 15 minutes, but only 5 to 10 minutes. So whoever wishes to make a few words, please go ahead. Yes.
1 minute is about the fact that I came from Europe here exactly because I know that this century is the Asiatic century. I am 50, I have 3 kids, 7, 9, 11. They will live in this century, which is the Asiatic century. Asia is the center of the world today and will be more and more the center of the world. Europe was the center of the world in the last century. So we have to be aware, and my message here is to solve domestic problems and to solve problems between countries, between neighboring countries. The only way is to do it having in mind the global picture, the big picture. And today, if this century is the Asiatic century, the Asian countries have to be in mind the fact that they are the center of the world. That brings responsibilities. Responsibilities in running global problems, in finding global solutions. And the only way to solve internal problems is to have this big picture. This is my point, and I'm sure that a meeting like the one we are attending in Jeju is very important to raise this level of awareness in this very important Asiatic century.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Whoever wishes to speak more, please. Okay, Prime Minister Mahathir.
I just want to pick up our colleague from Italy's concluding remarks, education. We have to educate our next generation, our young people, our children, our grandchildren, in the words of Mario Mokapuna, in the futility of war, not the glories of war. History is written on the glories of war. The heroes and the heroines who did remarkable things. And we forget to write about the families destroyed and the countries and communities devastated. History must teach a more realistic interpretation of what happens in war. And then I think the world might stop going to war.
Thank you. Prime Minister Mahathir.
Thank you. The whole world has now been divided into nation states, and every nation encourages nationalism. One of the causes of conflicts and wars is extreme nationalism. We have people who talk about not 1 inch of my territory. We'll fight to the death to defend 1 inch of my territory. That is a sort of wrong valuation. You don't value the lives of your people, the destruction that war would bring simply because of this 1 square inch of your land. I think in conflicts, we can resolve it through negotiation, through arbitration, or through a court of law, because the results is far better than if you win the war. You go to war, you may not win, you may lose the same land, but you negotiate or you go to a court of law, you may lose the land in the same way, but the cost is very much less. Nobody is killed, you don't have enemies after the solution, and I think we become a little bit more humane and human because we reject the killing of people as a solution to our conflict.
Thank you. Prime Minister Ko.
We were former leaders. My message to current and future leaders of Asia is this. This is indeed our century, the Asia-Pacific century. Don't blow it.
Thank you for being short. Prime Minister Murayama, you'd like to say a few words?
You want to say something?
いや私はね尖閣島の問題がね領有権をめぐって日本と中国がこう緊迫した時があるんですよ。その時にね中国に飛んだんですよ。そしてね世界第2の経済大国とね中国と日本とね島をめぐって人も住んでないような島をめぐってねパチパチやりますかとこう言ったらね中国の皆さんが言うにはそんなことはもう絶対考えてませんと、こう言うんですよ。私はねこの島がね本当にその地域のためにね活用できるようなのがあるんなら一緒に開発したらいいじゃないですかと、ね、仮に領有権が日本にあったってねそれは領有権が問題でなくてこの島をどうか開発して周辺の皆さんのねプラスになるようにしていくかということが大事なんでね、そういう方向でお互いに話をしてたね開発したらいいじゃないですかとこういう話をしたんですよ。だからまあ意見は十分聞きましたって向こうは言ってましたけどねですからね私はやっぱりこのお互いにこの対立してお互いにその権利を主張し合うという前にその権利は権利として仮に棚上げしてもですね棚上げしてもその地域がその権利を所有するようなこの国のためにですねプラスになるような方向に活用されていけばねそれはそれでいいんじゃないかとそのことの方が大事じゃないかとこういう話をするんですけどもね1時間晩に私はそういうやっぱり心でね心がけでこれからもやっぱり努力していくことが大事じゃないかというふうに思いますよ。力で解決すれば必ず復讐が起こる。これはもう歴史が教えてますから、ね、力で解決するんじゃなくて道理で解決すると心で解決するということが大事だと。
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'd like to thank you all for sharing your wisdom and vision. And it's time to wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, would you give this very distinguished panel a big round of applause?
Thank you very much, members of the panel and the chair. This concludes the World Leaders Session, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to end on a welcome note that lunch will be served on the first floor for our guests with event hall luncheon coupons. We hope you'll enjoy your lunch. Thank you.